All right, guys, so we are on the layout portion of our portfolio project, and we're talking about different basic graphic design principles with layout. I'm going to show you some of those principles and then kind of run through them a little bit more in depth. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with that. All right. Basically, you're going to see a couple of these slides that are kind of like vocab pages. So document layout, pages, grid system, margins. We're going to go over each of these in particular. And keep in mind you also have this PowerPoint in case you want to go back and look at some of the vocab. Now, this is stuff we talk about all the time in design. But if you're new to Yearbook, or if this is your first time in Yearbook, or maybe you just need a refresher, it's good to kind of look at some of this vocab, things that we do touch on in class, and then as we move forward, you'll kind of see how we apply these different concepts. Okay, so let's talk about pages. When we're working in InDesign, on the right-hand toolbar, you have a little tool called Pages. Now, when we are usually working in InDesign, we're not this year, we're working in online design due to COVID, but when we're working in InDesign, we work with pages, and we have master pages. When we are working with pages, just keep in mind this is where it's at. To create a new page, you would just click on this right here, and you can add more pages to your spread if you so need to. Also, keep in mind that the A master right here is where any master graphic design elements should be at. So, for example, if I were to put a folio on the A master, we're going to see it on all of the pages, even new pages that are created in InDesign. But if we put a folio on page 3, it's not going to show up on page 5. You would have to use your master pages in order to put that folio and keep it consistent in the same place on all of your pages. Okay? All right, grid system. This is so important. In layout, we use columns that are broken up with picas, right? We do not try to have some big, large paragraph of text across a page. When we're working with newspaper, yearbook, magazine design, whatever it be, we have a grid system where we keep inside of our margins and we keep inside of our columns as well. Now, you can deviate from that. It's, of course, up to you on how creative you want to be and what kind of creative liberties you want to take. But we try to keep within these columns, okay? And again, with our margins, InDesign, online design, we have these margins. These help designers keep text within a specific area so that it's not running outside, and we also can maintain white space around our text for readability as well. Okay, some more vocab words like focal point, folio, aligning the baseline text in adjacent columns, and captions is what we're going to go over next. So, focal point. Every single spread, every single layout that you create, and especially as you start to get ideas for your portfolio, is something I want you to keep in mind is the focal point. That is where your eye is going to be drawn to first. Using large text, type hierarchy, and then also large photos or maybe a large graphic design is where our eye is going to be naturally drawn. We want something for our eye to go to first. Even if you're looking at spreads that have 20 plus photos on them in Yearbook, you want to have one photo be the dominant photo, so our eye goes there first, okay? Folios. Folios need to exist on every spread, on every design. It's a consistency thing, and we need to know what pages we are on. It's so important. Please make sure you're always leaving room for the folio. I've definitely seen kids have issues with that. Even yearbookers have issues with this as well. Keeping in mind the folio needs to be present and keeping it right above or just slightly below the margin so we make sure it's not cut off. Okay? This is so important, and it's something that I think has taken a couple years for us to catch up in Yearbook. And in easing, I always try to pull it out there, but it's hard to sometimes remember it, but it's so important, especially if you're ever working in newspaper design, you're going to have to do this. So please align baseline text. So when I talk about baseline text, it's the text that is hitting the end of columns. Align it. Make it all one line. I do not want to see a bunch of white space right here. You have to align text and columns. It's uniformity. You have to do it in design. Okay, having a bunch of white space in a column of text looks extremely awkward. okay? What you can do is use a flow line. So if you're working in InDesign, you can just click and drag flow lines either from the top or the bottom of the rulers in order to create a line that will go across here. You won't see it in the final design, but it will help you align your text, okay? And then next is captions. Every single photo needs to have a caption. If you ever see a photo that doesn't have a caption, you're gonna have to go back and put a caption on it, okay? The caption, and we talk about this in easing, so if you haven't had me in easing or haven't taken an easing class, it's so important. For the captions, it has to include the who and the what is in a photo. Any additional sentences should be adding more context to the photo, okay? So I want to see who is in the photo or what is in the photo and what is going on, and then again, second sentence will add some more context for the reader, okay? Some other things we see in design. Spacing in text, we'll talk a little bit about that. Visual hierarchy, we talked about type hierarchy. Now we're going to talk about visual hierarchy. Threading our text, and also talking a little bit about preliminary designs. All right, spacing in text, okay? When we look at text and we look at boxes around it or pictures around it, one thing I see all the time, and it's really difficult, is I see students taking text like this and pushing it up against the edge of boxes, the tops of boxes, or the tops of photos and on the left of photos, okay? All text, whether it's within a transparent box or it just has a box behind it, or if it has a photo behind it, whatever it may be, it needs to have space, okay? Space is so important. We need to have space around text so it looks like it has room to breathe. When text is pushed up against box, it looks crammed, it looks like it wasn't designed well, and you can't read it very well either, okay? So please just keep this in mind, it's so important. Please add space around your text, okay? You can always make boxes bigger, and also keep in mind you shouldn't be putting your text within the colorful box behind it. These are two separate boxes. This one is a graphic element, this is a text box, but your text should not be within the actual box on here, okay? Make this its own box, just drag it and move it to where it needs to be so you can have space around it. Okay, same thing with this right here. All right, let's talk about text and spacing. So if we're looking at all of the text that is going to go around this photo, what I notice is that right here we have a pica of space in between where the photo ends and the text underneath it. We do not want to see text that is right up against, right up below the photo on here. No, we want to see text that is a little bit underneath it. We want to see this white space, okay? We have a little bit of white space as well around this caption, okay? What you can do is add text wrap in order to create the spacing around a photo as well, okay? All right, visual hierarchy. It's the same thing really as type hierarchy, meaning that the most important information is the biggest. The headline is the biggest here, it's the most interesting. This photo is the biggest, so it's prominent for visual hierarchy, okay? We want to make sure that we have something that is dominant, and then we have other elements that are smaller. One, it's adding contrast. Two, it leads us to see what is the most important information. All right, next is threading our text. Now, in online design, this may or may not be working as well, but when we're working in InDesign, we want to thread our text. This graphic shows it super well, okay? If you have text that goes in a box and it continuously keeps going outside of this box, but you want it to stay this shape and this size, what are you gonna do? You're gonna click on the little red plus button and move it into a text box next to it. Okay, you're going to want to do this with all the text. So if you want text to be in a box that is this size and this big, right, you don't need to make your text box bigger. You don't need to delete your text, but rather make sure you're threading text. It's so important, okay? All right, let's talk about placing photos and maintaining that proportion. Okay, you can copy and paste text into InDesign, but you cannot copy and paste photos and graphics. So when we're working with InDesign and even online design, make sure that we're making a frame and we're placing our photo within that frame. Do not copy and paste photos. Instead, in InDesign, you'll go up to File and then place that photo. Now, to maintain proportion in a photo, what we are going to do is go to Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionately. Okay, if you need to crop your photo a little bit, you can totally do that. But make sure you go back to Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. All right, it might take off a little bit at the top or bottom, but if you need your photo to fit inside certain guidelines with a frame, it's going to do that. Okay, we do not want to stretch frame. We don't want to fit the content to the frame. That's going to make it not proportional. Okay, and we don't want to fit the frame to the content either, right? If you want the frame to be a certain size to go over a certain number of columns, that's fine, but just make sure that the photo within that frame is filling it proportionally. Okay, we're almost at the end of our layout talk right now. But just a couple other things to add in with layout, and this is so important, is make sure that we have that contrast. We want big text and small text to be paired together. Why? Because it looks good. It creates contrast. What else adds contrast is color. It can add a little bit of pop. It can make something look a little bit different, right? Instead of just having this be black and white or gray and black, whatever it might be, we can add some color to make something stand out. If you want your headline to stand out more, consider putting a bar of color behind it to make it pop a little bit more. If you want alt copy to stand out against the white of the spread, add color, add a box of color behind it, okay? White space. Do not be afraid of white space. It's okay if there is some space on a spread that is not exactly utilized, right? Why? Because it's going to draw our eye to the content that we want to see, okay? Again, going back to that focal point right there. That's what we're doing. And then lines and boxes. Lines can help contribute to a theme by utilizing your color scheme. So you can add in different pops of color from that color scheme just by adding in lines, just by changing some of the colors of the text as well. Okay? And that is it. That is everything to do with layout and color and type. And this is all to help you get ready to create that portfolio and also to help you move forward in Yearbook and keep in mind some of these things that we are going to do when creating and designing spreads. Okay, thanks guys.